Hi guys, I hope this is recording okay. Um, so we're going to start the reading and I hope the lighting is okay. And the first book that you guys chose for me to read to you is actually one of mine. And it's called HUGS and it's Hearts United Gather Strength. And it's probably backwards in the video. I'm sorry. So we're going to at least start this today. I also had written the book that comes before this is called I Miss My Daddy. And you can find this book and I Miss My Daddy both on Amazon. And this one is about turning grief into growth. So we'll start with the prelude. It's weird reading my own book to you. In my previous book, I Miss My Daddy, I shared stories with you from those, including myself, who had lost their fathers. You cried with them as they opened up and showed you where they were on their journey through the grieving process. You felt a healing already beginning to take place inside of yourself as you began to realize that you're not alone and the pains you felt, or maybe still do feel, are exactly right for where you were or are on your journey. Currently, in 2016, it's been 11 years, now it's been 18 years, since my dad passed. I still find myself having dreams now and then. I still cry from time to time, and I bet you were hoping that by now I could tell you it's all better. Well, like in the first book, that's a yes and a no answer. I've learned to cope, as will you, but you'll always have those days where you'll miss them. The way you cope may change. You may even be involved in your life and time passes by without a thought of them in the forefront of your mind. And then suddenly you're looking at your calendar and remember a special date, and then the memories flood back as if it just happened, and you're dealing with all those feelings just as strong as ever. You have a good cry that lasts from minutes to hours, but then it passes, and the sadness seems to subside while you miss them. You remember good times and the love, and you continue on with your day. I'd give anything to be able to tell you that you'll never feel sad again. With each passing year, I miss my dad more and more, but sometimes I can't believe just how much time has actually gone by. I will have dreams about him, which I consider to be visits from him. The last dream I had, well, at the time of writing this book, I actually had a dream about him last night, but I don't want to get sidetracked. The last dream I had was walking up some stairs at a family gathering, and Daddy had some kind of big announcement to make. As I neared the top, Daddy took my hands, and I remember how rough they felt because he worked hard all his life, and he pulled me in for a hug where I whispered in his ear, "I miss you." He started to whisper something back, but I'm not sure what it was, because I was waking up, where I immediately began to sob, and then I felt guilty. You see, I feel guilty for missing him so much, as if my holding on to his memory so tight is keeping him from moving on to where and what he needs to be doing. That, or it's like he constantly has to be watching over me because I'm always missing him. Whatever the reason, it's part of grieving and a natural process. So if you are experiencing some of the same things, don't beat yourself up over it. It's all right. Remember what I said in the first book. You are allowed to feel whatever you are feeling, whenever you are feeling it. In this follow-up to I Miss My Daddy, you will read more stories of loss and others will share with you their pains and growth. However, this one contains much more. You're also going to read about how other events in our lives cause us to grieve, and you'll hear from others about their own discoveries through their journeys and how their pain has changed them and helped them to grow. You're also going to read about more of the personal losses I've gone through and how each one has been used to shape who I am today. As with the first book, it's my hope that this book helps you realize that you're not alone, and it's truly okay to be where you are in your journey, and it's okay to feel however you feel. This is your journey. No one can walk it but you. Within these pages, I hope you will find even one thing that speaks to you. And just maybe through knowing that someone else has gone through what you are going through or have gone through, and knowing that they are still here and that they are still moving forward, it will give you the inspiration and courage to take that pain that you feel and use it to keep forging your path. I'm not a very good reader out loud, but I'm going to do my best. Before I continue with this, one of the things my mom asked me in her last weeks of life was, is there going to be a book about me? And then my niece asked me after she passed, when are you going to write I Miss My Mommy? And that book is going to be written. I can't say for sure when it will be finished and published. It could be a year from now. It could be longer than that. It just all depends on timing. So let's get back into this. Plus, I'm still working through feelings, and so I just want to give those a little bit of time to just kind of even out. So, chapter 1, childhood and forgiveness. We're going to jump right into this. These are my thoughts on loss from a child's perspective, particularly the loss of the familiar, based on my own experiences and what I have observed as my many years as a nanny. Again, I'm not a child psychologist. I am not a professional. However, I have a lot of life experience, even when it comes to children. I have been a nanny for and cared for children of all ages for as long as I can remember. Everyone from my own nieces and nephew to being the governess for a member of the Virginia Treasury, and I've observed a lot of things. When we as adults deal with the loss of a relationship, we grieve. We may go through depression, we may withdraw, we may feel stressed, anger, etc. I have taken care of children from broken homes and from very loving, stable homes, and there is a definite difference in the behavior. Children deal with the loss of having a stable home, such as a divorce, a separation. I'm not even talking about the death of a parent here. I'm talking about the loss of what they've always known. Mommy and Daddy living in the same house. Mommy and Daddy tucking them in at night. Seeing Mommy and Daddy together. They deal with this differently than we as adults do. My parents divorced when I was 27, and it still affected me. The thought of them no longer being together after 29 years of marriage, even as an adult, I had trouble with that concept. As an adult, I was ready to accept it. Was not ready to accept it. It was very difficult for me to accept that my parents were no longer together. Everything I had always known, and I was grown. And so when they got remarried, the last thing I wanted to do was accept someone new in the position where my mom or dad should have been. So I grieved. I needed to grieve the loss of something I had always known, and I did so in my own way. I got angry. Sometimes I expressed my anger verbally, but mostly my anger turned inward. It was a quiet anger, and so I shut out who I thought was the offending person, the new person that they were with. If you think about it from a child's perspective, if it's hard for us as adults to understand it, how much harder is it then for a child to accept a situation where their mommy and daddy are no longer together and they are forced, because it's not a decision that they have any say-so in. And that's a whole nother issue in itself. Them not having any control over it, but they are forced into a situation where they have no control. Instead of the mommy and daddy they have always known, they are now living with one parent, or even more traumatic, one or both parents now have someone new in their life and maybe even in the house where the child resides. We think children are quick to understand and resilient, but we don't really know what goes on in their heads. It may be very hard for them to express it. So you take a child who now has to deal with the loss of presence of one parent, and again, I'm not even talking about the death of a parent. That's bad enough. And then if you throw into it someone new, They have a whole big confusing situation that they have to get used to. So they will grieve what was familiar to them, and they may even show signs of stress and have behavior issues. But what they're really doing is grieving. They're having to let go of the familiar, and they don't know how. I can't begin to tell you how to fix that, except if you're someone who has a child or children and your situation has changed, your home life has changed, before you even see signs of stress, talk to them. Let them air their feelings without judgment. Just as we have a right to feel however we feel about situations that cause us grief, kids do too. Maybe more so because they don't have any say in what's happening. They just have to go with the flow. Their little brains are forced to deal with a situation that, heck, we as adults can't always comprehend. So talk to them. Let them air their anger, their disappointment, their sadness, their concerns within a controlled environment. Let them express how they feel without judgment, without repercussion, within a given time frame. Outside that time frame, demand that they behave as they should. But within a setting such as a family discussion, let them air what they feel in a safe environment. You might be surprised at what they have to say. Other than that, my suggestion is to seek counseling for them if they're still having trouble dealing with the changes. Change is difficult for any of us, let alone a child. This first story is a good example of how our relationships with adults, particularly our parents, affect how we relate to other adults once we're grown. And before I read that story, I want to say to children, their brains do not complete development until like early to mid 20s. Did you know that? So when a child goes through something traumatic or a loss in their childhood, in their teenage years, in their early adult years, it literally rewires the brain. It changes the path that they are growing up in, and that the path that they are supposed to be on. It changes their personality even. So it's really important that you understand that if you see a child acting out, ask yourself what is happening in this child's life. Don't ask yourself what's wrong with this kid or this kid is just a bad kid. Mm-mm. Ask yourself what is happening in this child's life that's causing this kind of behavior. I'm going to read this first story and then we'll stop there because I don't want these to be too long of videos, and then I'll pick up again in the next video. And I'll create a whole playlist just for these so that you know exactly where you can find them so you can continue to watch them. This is Diane's story. I had a mother who, for her own reasons, would leave often. For whatever reason, maybe she wasn't happy at home, but she'd leave. Sometimes we'd come home from school. There would be a note and she'd be gone, or she'd actually tell us she was leaving. Or she and my dad would have an argument. She'd walk out and be gone for a couple of weeks. This happened quite often. That was something my sisters and I had no control over. We had no say in it. We were forced to deal with her absence, with feelings of abandonment and feelings that we had done something to make her not want to stay. I've spent my entire life dealing with grief. I still, as a 45-year-old woman, deal with grief, although with lesser intensity than when I was a child. Those childhood memories creep up from time to time, and I still grieve memories of how could my mom not love me and my sisters enough to stay. As an adult, I'm able to process better, but there are still lingering feelings of grief, lingering feelings of loss, and not understanding. When she would come back, it's not as if we would sit down and discuss the situation. It was as if nothing ever happened. We never got to talk about it. I remember one time in particular, and for some reason, this specific incident seems to be the most traumatic in my childhood memories. I remember one morning I was getting ready to go to school. I was in the 5th or 6th grade. My mom had this buffet-style dresser that she loved. She was trying to get someone with a truck to move it for her, and said that if she could, she would not be there when we got home from school. First of all, why would you put that on your child? Why would you lay such a heavy burden on your very young child, much less before they were getting ready to go to school? My next thought has always been, why did she love that buffet dresser more than her children? Why was she concerned with moving that and not being with her children? So those two questions have always caused me grief with regards to this incident in my life. Those questions have never been answered, and they probably never will be. So I went to school that day, and I spent the entire day in the nurse's office with my first ever migraine headache. I remember laying down and trying to sleep, but all I could do was cry and pray. I remember praying so hard. I even remember the prayer. I remember saying, "Dear God, please don't let her be able to get a truck to move that buffet." That's the prayer I remember praying, because I figured if she couldn't move the dresser, she'd still be there. The nurse attempted to reach my mother to no avail. The whole bus ride home, I was tense. Even as a child, my blood pressure must have been through the roof. I was nauseous and sick. The bus pulled up to the house, and I remember walking very slowly up to the door. I remember seeing the buffet dresser there, so all of a sudden I started to feel a little bit better. But as I got closer, I saw a note, and it was at that my heart sank again. I wish to this day that I had saved that note. It basically said that she wasn't able to find a truck, and she went to my grandmother's house, and that we weren't to go there or to call her. As my sisters came home from school, I was left to tell them what had happened. Then when my dad came home from work, he faced the scene where you have three very young daughters curled up in a chair together crying and upset. When I showed him the note and told him what happened, he felt like it was a joke, because who would leave their three young children alone like that? He went looking through the house for her. That night I remember sleeping on the living room couch, where I could see my dad in his bedroom, where my sister slept in the bed with him. None of us wanted to be alone. I wanted to be close, but I also needed some space. And that's how I get when I grieve. I need a little space to deal. And that's my grieving process. At the same time, I needed to make sure that Daddy wasn't going anywhere. It always chokes me up to even remember that event. It's an event that when it comes up in my mind, the same feelings are there. I shake even as I write this. They've never been dealt with. They've never gone away, and I don't know if they ever will. Those memories and feelings take me back to that time. I skipped school for probably an entire week. There was no one there to make me go. I got caught because my uncle came to the house looking for my dad. I guess he went and told my mom that I hadn't been in school. Then my mom called me and told me to go to my grandmother's house, where she proceeded to try and act like a parent and verbally discipline me for not going to school. But in my mind, I felt like, what right did she have to discipline me? She wasn't there, so in my mind, she had given up the right to be able to tell me what to do. In my mind, she didn't want me anymore. She didn't want to be my mother anymore, so why was she sitting here trying to tell me what to do? That's not the only time I felt like that with her. As I said, her leaving happened often, throughout my childhood and in my teen years, and finally as an adult. I remember it may have been about 2 weeks later, we were out front riding our bikes, and my mom came walking up the sidewalk. My sisters and I kind of looked at each other, not really knowing what to think or say, because we had begun to adjust. My dad had to hire a sitter. This part falls into the things about how children don't like the idea of someone taking the place of a parent that's gone. Because even though she was our sitter, I can't speak for my sisters, but I personally felt like I didn't want her there. She'd come over, cook us dinner and stuff, and I just didn't want her there. Now, I don't know why this particular memory makes me cry. I don't know why it upsets me, but I remember her opening a can of green beans. She was cooking us dinner, and she ate a cold green bean right out of the can, and I got very upset about that. I thought, my mommy bought those for us, not you. So even though I was angry with my mom, I still loved and missed her. If my mom wasn't going to be there, I certainly didn't want someone else to take her place or try to. I didn't want someone else doing the things for us that my mom usually did. As an adult, I know that's not what she was doing. She was doing a job. She was looking after us. Getting back to the part where she came home, we just continued to ride our bikes. I remember the sun was going down. The street lights had come on, and we were riding around on the street in front of the house, back when it was safe to do so. She went into the house. A little while later, my mom calls us all in, and it was as if nothing ever happened. She was back, and we were supposed to just move on, as if everything was fine. But you see, everything was not fine. Everything was not okay. Questions were not answered. And being that we were children, we had no say. We just had to accept the situation as it was given to us. I don't know about you, but I can really feel the hurt and pain, even resentment, in Diane's story. I've spoken with her at great length about this, and today she has found it in her heart to forgive her mother. But she still deals with abandonment issues, and it has made it difficult for her to have successful relationships. She pulls away from not just men, but people in general. Once they begin to get too close, she gets this flighty feeling and does things to make sure that they stay emotionally separated from her in order to avoid becoming too close to someone. Diane will sometimes resort to moving to a whole different area to keep that person from being able to hurt her. You don't have to be a psychologist to know that the way Diane deals with relationships today has everything to do with abandonment issues she still deals with from her childhood. Situations that happen to us as children do linger with us as adults, especially if they're not dealt with while we're children. If we're not allowed to express ourselves while we're children and don't get the help we need as children, then as adults, those situations affect our relationships. They affect how we think, how we feel, how we deal with circumstances and people in our adult life. So even as an adult, Diane still grieves a situation that happened all those years ago as a child. Healing has never taken place for some of her childhood traumas. If you're dealing with a situation with your child, your home situation has changed. Something has changed in a dramatic way. Don't assume that your child is okay. Don't assume that they're resilient and are going to bounce back. Even if life goes on as normal and they seem okay, those memories, those feelings are lodged in there, deep, and they're strong, and they will creep up from time to time as they grow up. It's going to affect them if they don't grieve, if they don't get the help they need while they're young, while it's happening. Help them grieve the loss that they feel. It will make for a much healthier, stable adult. By now, you're probably reflecting on your own childhood and connecting the dots and having some aha moments. So that's why I'm so messed up. Perhaps you're thinking about your own children, especially if you are now a single parent or recently married. Good. I mean to get you thinking. I mean to cause you to evaluate yourself and how you can grow and be a better person. Sometimes what we face in the mirror when we are honest is not easy. Just remember this, the past is past. So if you're reading this and childhood stuff comes back, don't start holding grudges now. It's too late for that. You've got to let go of it. You've got to grieve the lost childhood. You've got to mourn whatever it is that has screwed you up as an adult. And then just as with any loss, use that pain, sorrow, and resentment. Make it work for you instead of against you. Look at your scars, but then smile because you are still here. Sometimes, through all that you've gone through, you are still functioning somehow, even if it's somewhat dysfunctional. You owe it to yourself to celebrate your strength and fortitude. Forgive the past and don't live in it. Until you pack up all those old boxes, you can never move forward to your future. And you can never move forward to being a healthy adult. And you can never bring up healthy children if you yourself are not healthy. Think about that for a while. It's not that easy, you're probably saying to me out loud. Yeah, it is. You're the one holding on to the pain, and only you can decide what to do with it. No one else has the power to control that hurt except you. If you're grown and you've already come through a traumatic childhood and you're experiencing a sense of loss, the very best thing that you can do for yourself is forgive. I'm not telling you that you have to forget, but you need to find a way within yourself to forgive. Forgive whatever happened or whoever did it to you, and forgive yourself for holding on to the pain. Chances are you're never going to get the I'm sorry or the I was wrong, and you certainly can't go back and undo it or relive it and make different decisions. If you're the one that caused the pain, forgive yourself. Forgive yourself for knowing better or for not knowing better. If you can make amends, do it. But the bottom line is forgive. There's a line from the movie Speak that I really like. If something's eating at you, you gotta find a way to use it. I've had issues with my mother, and my relationship with her was a bumpy one until the last couple of years. For some reason, they never seem to remember it the way we do. And then recently, I came back from a visit to my mom's. I expected to see, well, someone else. The woman that I saw was not the mother of my past. She didn't seem to be the woman that I had come to know. A woman proud of the motto, look out for number one. This woman was weak, frail, and needy. Instead of feeling pushed away and unwanted, for the first time in my life, as she held on to my arm, needing to be nurtured and comforted, she lay there sick and not feeling well, wanting to feel better, wanting so much to feel better. Her head laid on my arm, her arms wrapped around me, her cheek against my arm, drool and all. I looked at my sister and back at my mom, then back at my sister again, and then again at my mom. And I felt so confused for a moment. Then all of a sudden, like ice melting in the heat of the sun, this hard shell that I've had around my heart towards my mother, for always not feeling good enough, unwanted, unneeded, melted away. I may never know or understand the woman that caused me to feel such things, but I very much want to know the mother that seems to need me, the one that even complimented my weight loss. I'm not saying that like magic everything is okay, but what good does holding a grudge do? What positivity could possibly come out of it? Forgiveness is so you can move forward. And at that moment, I forgave her. So that's the end of chapter 1. I think next time I'm going to have some tea handy. I hope you enjoyed that. If you haven't guessed by now, I'm Diane. And this book was written before my mom passed away. This was published in 2016. So, but it's called HUGS, Hearts United Gather Strength. It's the second book of a 2-part series by Dreama Collins, detailing her journey along with others through the grieving process. She shows you how to use grief as a tool to help you heal and grow, and how to avoid allowing it to damage your heart and relationships. This book is insightful and compassionate and allows you to see how grief comes in many forms, not just the death of someone we love. Grief is experienced when we lose a job, a home, a relationship, and a pet. Grief is a journey we all have to go through. It's unavoidable. So, like I said, I hope you enjoyed that. And next time chapter 2 is by a young lady who wants to be called Bama. And we will read about her story. If you have any questions or comments, I love to see them. Just put them in the comment section, or feel free to email me. Um, please like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I will see you for the next reading. God bless.